Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited today to walk you through how I budget in Excel. I talked about this in a couple of videos ago where I went through 3 things that I plan digitally and don't use pen and paper, and budgeting is one of those items that I just can't do on pen and paper. And I had a lot of requests in the comment section to go through my spreadsheet and my budgeting process. I want to start off with a disclaimer. Budgeting is different for everybody. Everybody has different lifestyle, different choices, different financial goals. This is just what works for me. This is how I use Excel to plan my financial goals, to track all of my expenses, and to basically keep my life together. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to walk you through each of my tabs here at the bottom and explain to you how I use this spreadsheet and how it works for me. Please feel free to ask any questions in the comments below. I also went ahead and put in some arbitrary numbers. These are obviously not my numbers. Those are very private. So I just put in some fake numbers so that we can talk through this spreadsheet together. So the first tab is the income tab, and this is pretty basic. I get paid on a bi-weekly basis. So I have a space for all of my paychecks. There are a couple of months each year where I will get 3 paychecks instead of 2. And for the most part, this doesn't change over the course of the year. My company does offer an option where you can pay for the cafeteria and the coffee shop by having it directly taken out of your paycheck. So sometimes my paycheck does vary slightly from week to week. And if that is the case, I will go ahead and update that. Otherwise, this stays pretty consistent. This tab can obviously be manipulated to work for you. My boyfriend gets paid on a different schedule than I do, so his spreadsheet has that in it. So this tab has my expenses, and the top part are the fixed expenses. So these are the expenses that are on the same date every month and don't change, at least not a ton. Electric does vary month to month, but for the most part, the expenses in this section are all the same. So I have a couple that I do pay every month: rent, phone, cable, electric, Netflix. I have some other categories that I've hidden here for privacy, but you could add anything that works here for you. Car payments, I live in New York, so that's obviously not a thing for me. And then this is the total of the fixed expenses. Again, arbitrary numbers. And then it has the due date at the bottom, and I will tell y'all where that plays in later. Underneath the fixed expenses, I have my flexible expenses. So these are things that come every month, and I know I need every month, but I try to stick within a certain guideline. So the categories that I have are groceries, eating out, bars, and then other. I actually usually have cabs or Ubers in this section because that is a big thing in my budget. But again, you could have anything here that really makes sense for you. In the top part, this is the plan number, the number that I want to stay under. And then underneath it, I have actual. And so I can update the plan if the actual is really deviating from what I thought it was going to be, or if the actual is less than the plan, then I take that extra money and put it towards one of my financial goals. The other part of the flex expenses is that I do track them on an almost daily basis. I come into the spreadsheet probably at least every other day, sometimes every day, to update this. So I'll go ahead and put the date in here, and then the category, and then, the amount, and then where I shopped at. And that way I can check my account balance. I have a separate account just for flex spending that I can make sure this total is the same. This little gray number here is the amount per day that I have left in this flex category if I'm thinking of it on a per day basis. It just sort of helps me keep my mind together on how much I have left in terms of groceries and eating out and things like that. All right, the next tab is sinking funds. And if you follow Dave Ramsey, this is a Dave Ramsey concept that I have adopted and tweaked a little bit for my needs. So these are the categories that I have in terms of sinking funds. Again, everybody has different categories. All of the numbers in this section, with the exception of travel, which I will get to in a minute, are based on prior years. So I budgeted this way for a couple of years now, and I have a pretty good sense of how much per month I spend in each of these categories. Does it deviate? Absolutely. And if I have to adjust it throughout the year, I will. Budgets are ongoing. They change, they need to be adjusted. So I definitely do that. What I'm showing you here is if a brand new spreadsheet at the beginning of the year. Travel is the only one that's a little bit different. And that one, I try to be a little bit more specific on how much the payment would be every month. So what I do is I map out all my trips. So here are all my 2019 trips. These are actual trips and potential actual numbers. I haven't gone through it quite that in depth, but I just sort of threw some things in here. So these are all the trips I'm going on. if there's a flight, how much that's going to cost, if there's a hotel, how much that's going to cost, and then other expenses related to that trip. When it does happen, I will put what I spent and then what's left over. And instead of letting that sinking fund build and roll over, I will actually just take that extra money and put it towards my financial goals. Then this section down here calculates how much the monthly payment should be based on what months I'm going to need the money. So I have the need column set up such that flight purchases happen 3 months prior to the trip, and then everything else happens the month of the trip. Again, this does not always work out perfectly, but for the most part, it works. And then I have everything I need in my travel sinking fund in order to cover my trips. All right, this tab is my sinking funds actual tab. So this is where I will, similar to my flex expenses, I will make sure that my account balance for my sinking funds is accurate. So in is based on the date and how much has been paid into each of the separate accounts. Out we'll get to in a second, and then the remaining balance. And then I make sure this number here in yellow matches my bank account online. And then over here, similar to the flex expenses, I will track all of my sinking funds. So I will put the date, I will put where I spent it. Let's say I went to Petco and bought Charlie food. Then it will update, and that's my new total. The other thing that this is useful for is sometimes I will analyze this out category and make sure that the amount that I'm spending goes with my plan and make sure that they're sort of on the same page and that I don't need to increase or even decrease any of my categories. One of the counter arguments to that is, well, you can never have too much in your sinking fund, right? I mean, if you are spending less than an average of $25 per month on Charlie, well then is it that big of a deal if you have too much? But money is so valuable when it's earning interest. So I would rather take that money and go put it somewhere where it's actually working rather than just sitting in my sinking funds checking account. All right, the next tab is the totals tab. Let me zoom this one in as well. So this is where I kind of add up everything that we just talked about. So we've got our income, we have our fixed expenses, our cash, that's what I am calling my flex expenses. You'll notice that January is double because I operate where the cash that's getting taken out of that month's paychecks is for the next month. But at the beginning of the year, January needs to pay for both January and February. Then the amount of the sinking fund, which just came from the sinking fund plan page. And then what is the difference? So what is my income minus all of my expenses? And I'm calling that extra. All that means is that is the extra amount of income that I have each month to put towards whatever my financial goals are at the time. Okay, and then I have one more account, which is my checking account, and that is the one where I have set up all of my auto direct deposits for my fixed expenses. And I wanna make sure that that balance is all on par as well. So this literally has a day by day, and then all of these numbers pull from the other tabs. So the income pulls from the income tab, it matches up to the date. The rent, I split up half my rent from one paycheck and half from the other. Fix these auto from those dates that I showed you on the fixed expense tab. Cash, normally I have it pulling out on the first of the month. January is a little funky because I have it on the first paycheck of the month, but normally you'll see I have it pull out on the first of the month. It also happens to be a paycheck for February and March next year. Let's get to a month there, April. And then sinking funds, again, January is a little funky because it's the first of the month. So that one has the entire January sinking fund coming out of the first paycheck, which does result in a slightly negative balance. So the truth is I won't put the whole amount into my sinking fund account until I get to this paycheck. I needed to scroll down to something that was a little bit different so that you guys could see what was really happening with the sinking fund. So I have half of the month sinking fund coming out on the first of the month, which is truly coming from the paycheck, the second paycheck of the prior month, which is how it works on the totals tab. This sinking fund column is actually 1/2 of the prior month and then 1/2 of the current month. And that's how it works in the checking account. So the first half is coming from the last paycheck of the prior month, and then the second half is coming out on the first paycheck of the current month. That was really confusing. I hope that makes sense to y'all. It makes sense to me, and it works with my checking account and making sure that it's always positive. And then the last column is the extra column, and that is just pulling out the extra, and I can do whatever I want with that money. And you'll see that it matches up to what that checking account's balance was at the end of the paycheck cycle from the prior month. As much as I would love to think of things in a strictly month standpoint, it really comes down to being more paycheck cycles. And then the last tab is my current financial goal, which happens to be savings. And just for a random example, I pretended that I have a savings goal of $10,000 for something specific. So what I have happening here is, say at the beginning of the year, I have 0 in that savings account. These payments are coming from the extra column on the totals tab. So whatever the extra amount that I have at the end of the month is, it's going into the savings account. And then the ending balance is obviously the starting balance plus the payment. I don't have this currently earning an interest because, let's be real, interest rates are so low right now. I have this auto stopping when I hit that goal, so that if I were to create other tabs with other financial goals, the money can auto roll over into those goals and I can see my year at a glance. So for example, if I had a debt tab and then a savings tab, well, as soon as that debt was paid off, then all the extra would go into savings and I could see what my savings would be at the end of the year. Let's say I upped my goal to something higher. Well, now I'm only hitting $12,000 at the end of the year. That's the amount of extra income I have to put towards my financial goals in this like arbitrary 2019 example. Okay, I know that was a lot of information and a lot of numbers and a lot of crazy calculations. I'm a numbers person. I have a math degree. I'm obsessed with spreadsheets and making numbers work and making things very, very precise. So for most people, this is probably way too much. You're thinking, I am not going to look at a budget spreadsheet every day. I'm not going to check 3 different accounts to make sure that all of the balances are the same. But I wanted to share my process with you in hopes that maybe something in here jumped out at you that will help you with your financial goals in the future. Unfortunately, I have not found a way to upload an Excel file to share with you. So this is something that you're interested in. Hopefully you can recreate most of it to your needs yourself. If you have any specific questions about the formulas and how I make them work, please feel free to ask me in the comments below and I will do my best to help you from the other side of a screen. Let me know in the comments below also how you budget. Are you an Excel girl? Are you a pen and paper? What pen and paper do you use? I love hearing about everybody's budgeting systems. Now that I've found one that works for me, it brings me so much peace. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you are new here, please click that subscribe button. I upload new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank you so much for watching. Happy planning.